Well, as waves of migrants continue to arrive on European shores, countries there are struggling with how to handle the people and the politics. Angela Merkel is facing rebels in her own coalition who oppose her open-door immigration policy. The German Chancellor says she'll accept a new plan which enables Germany to reject migrants already registered in another EU country. The Italian Prime Minister is set to meet later with Merkel today after his country turned away an aid boat with 630 people on board. Well, Spain and France ultimately welcomed those migrants. Senior international correspondent Tika Schubert is covering this story from Berlin, and our correspondent Delia Gallagher is in Rome. Good to have you both with us. I want to go first to Delia, because Italy claims victory in that this migrant boat was turned away and Spain accepted them, saying clearly our policy works and I hope Spain takes more. How is that resonating amongst the people there?
Well, you know, Linda, there were two separate polls this weekend, and Italians, 59% of them supported the government's action in closing the port to NGO ships. And what's interesting about that poll is these are not just right-wing supporters of the current government. There were 29% of left-leaning voters who also supported the government's action. And what we see, Linda, is a slight change in Italian sentiment from what seemed to be a very hardcore decision on the part of this new government towards, well, maybe Europe is now going to sit up and take notice. Maybe it will have some effect. What is going to be important going forward is what happens in Germany today and in the coming weeks with regard to asylum seekers. That is something that Italy is obviously going to feel the repercussions of, as indeed Europe as a whole. So it's one thing to close the ports as a kind of temporary measure to make Europe sit up and take notice, but it's another thing to actually affect some changes in the regulation, in the distribution of these migrants throughout European member states. Linda?
All right, thanks, Julia. I want to go to Atika now. Of course, Angela Merkel is facing a lot of pressure internally when it comes to her stance on immigration. And we've heard just last hour the US president weighing in on the problems in Europe while he deals with his own immigration issues here. He took to Twitter. He said, "The people of Germany are turning against their leadership as migration is rocking the already tenuous Berlin coalition. Crime in Germany is way up. Big mistake made all over Europe in allowing millions of people in who have so strongly and violently changed their culture." So is Angela Merkel facing a battle for her political life, and is crime up in Germany as a result of the immigration policies?
Well, no, crime is not up in Germany. In fact, the crime statistics for the year came out in May, and the Interior Minister, Horst Seehofer, who himself is a very conservative politician who's campaigned against immigration precisely on the grounds of security, announced the numbers. He said that crime has been is now at the lowest it's been in 30 years. And in fact, it dropped by nearly 10% from 2016 to 2017. So that part of the president's tweet is simply not correct. However, it is true that Angela Merkel is facing a mutiny within her own political alliance. That Interior Minister, Horst Seehofer, wants to unveil a 63-point immigration plan that would crack down on immigration, specifically tightening the rules for asylum here and turning back refugees at the border who have already applied for asylum elsewhere in the EU. Merkel did not agree with one point on that plan. She said she wanted to broker that still with other EU nations. So she's won a bit of a reprieve now. There was a bit of a showdown looming today, but basically she was able to hammer out some sort of a compromise. She now has 2 weeks to try and broker a deal with other EU nations so that if asylum seekers come to Germany, but they've already applied elsewhere, they will be turned back at the border. So what we're going to see now is a flurry of diplomatic activity over the next 2 weeks where Merkel tries to hammer that out before a July 1st deadline, where then she will have to explain to her coalition partners what's happening.
All right, so a busy few weeks ahead. Tika Schubert for us in Berlin, Delia Gallagher for us in Rome. Thank you both very much.